One stormy afternoon in the coastal city of Port Clement, Lena, a young financial analyst, was driving home when her eyes caught something that froze her soul. Lying by a flooded drain was a teenage boy, unconscious, weak, his body trembling in the rain. His lips were dry, his eyes barely open, and he was seconds away from death. Lena screamed, slammed on her brakes, and jumped out of her car. She ran straight to him. "My God," she cried, kneeling at his side. His breathing was shallow. His body burned with fever. Without a second thought, she lifted him into her arms. The weight of his fragile body shocked her. He was so light, as though life itself was slipping away from him. She carried him to her car and rushed to the nearest hospital. The boy's name was Kai. At just 15, life had already dealt him the hardest blows. He was raised by a single mother who loved him dearly. But one afternoon, tragedy struck. His mother died in a car accident on her way to pick him up from school. 3 months after her burial, her family took everything she owned, her apartment, her savings, her possessions, and abandoned Kai to fend for himself. Lonely, hungry, and broken, he wandered the streets. One day, he became very sick. And on that stormy afternoon, weak and hungry, he collapsed beside the flooded drain, the very place where Lena found him. At the hospital, doctors rushed him into emergency care. For hours, she sat outside the emergency ward, her clothes drenched and her hands shaking, praying the boy would survive. When the doctor finally emerged, he shook his head in disbelief. "This boy, he would not have lived another hour if you had not brought him." Lena's eyes filled with tears. She didn't know this boy, didn't know his name, but something deep inside told her she could not walk away. When the boy finally woke up, whispering faintly, he told her his name was Kai. From that day, Lena made a decision that shocked everyone who knew her. She didn't abandon him. She didn't leave him to the streets. Despite her own struggles in life, she took Kai in, cared for him, and raised him like her own younger brother. But soon, her kindness came with a heavy cost. At first, her neighbors whispered behind her back. Her friends mocked her, saying she was wasting her life on a boy that was not her blood. Then came the worst, her own family. Her mother-in-law hated the boy. Her husband became restless, jealous, and bitter. One night, Lena's husband sat her down. His words chilled her to the bone. "If you don't send that boy away, I will poison him." Lena froze, unable to believe what she was hearing. How could the man she shared her life with plot to kill the boy she had saved? But the hatred only grew stronger, and Kai heard everything. One night, hiding by the hallway, he overheard a terrifying phone conversation between Lena's husband and his mother. The plan was clear. If Lena refused to send Kai away, the boy would be poisoned before the week was over. That night, Kai lay awake, tears streaming down his face. He realized the truth. His presence was tearing Lena's life apart. She had risked everything for him, but he could not be the reason for her pain. At 4 a.m, while the house still slept, Kai rose. He packed nothing. He had no money, no plan, only faith. Quietly, he sneaked out of the house, his heart breaking with every step. Before leaving, he slipped a short emotional letter into Lena's handbag, the one she carried every day. It read, "Dear Sister Lena, thank you for saving me. Thank you for loving me when no one else did. I am not your blood, but you made me family. I will never forget you. Please forgive me for leaving. I don't want to be the reason you lose your husband, your home, your happiness. I will survive. I will find my way. And one day, I hope you'll be proud of me. With all my love, Kai." When Lena found the letter later that morning, her hands trembled. The words of gratitude, love, and farewell pierced her heart like a knife. She broke down in tears, calling his name, rushing everywhere to find him. But Kai was gone. And what happened next was something Lena never expected. Kai walked into the cold dawn with nothing but faith in his heart. He believed that leaving was the only way to protect Lena from more pain. He had no plan, no money, and no family waiting for him. Still, he hoped he would survive. On his way to an unknown town, he was ambushed by robbers. They beat him, stripped him of the little he carried, and left him with nothing but bruises and broken hope. Lying on the side of the road, Kai cried bitterly. His young heart wondered if perhaps he was cursed. He had run from death at the drain only to fall into despair again. Yet he refused to give up. Day after day, Kai wandered the streets of the strange town of Millbrook. His feet blistered, his clothes torn, his body weak with hunger. He begged for scraps just to survive. Sometimes he slept under abandoned market stalls, sometimes on bare sidewalks with the cold night wind as his only companion. But even in his suffering, Kai carried something many others did not: humility and faith. Whenever he begged, he bowed his head low, always whispering, "Thank you," even for the smallest kindness. When mocked, he kept silent. When humiliated, he prayed. And slowly, something extraordinary began to happen. One evening, as Kai was sweeping outside a small electronics repair shop in exchange for leftover food, a man passing by stopped and watched. The man owned the tiny shop. He noticed Kai's eagerness, his discipline, his respectful manner. Instead of giving him coins, the man gave him something far more valuable: an opportunity. He told Kai, "Come to my shop tomorrow. If you're willing to learn, I'll teach you." Kai's heart leapt. He had always been curious about technology, but he never had access to it. From that day, he worked tirelessly in the shop, cleaning, fixing cables, carrying boxes. But whenever the owner showed him something on the computer, Kai's mind absorbed it like a sponge. Weeks turned into months. Kai's skills grew. He taught himself faster than anyone expected, staying up late at night to read whatever scraps of manuals he could find. Soon, he was repairing gadgets, designing software, and creating ideas bigger than the tiny shop could contain. And then came the breakthrough. With borrowed access to an old laptop, Kai started building something of his own, a small tech idea that would later change his entire life. People in the community began to notice him. His solutions spread from one household to another, and soon companies came knocking. Investors saw his potential. Kai's little spark had turned into a fire. Years passed. Kai, once a weak orphan by the drain, rose to become a powerful and respected tech CEO. His name carried weight. His company grew beyond borders and his wealth multiplied. But even with all the riches and honor, he never forgot Lena, the woman who saved his life when the world ignored him. And just when Kai was at the peak of success, Lena's life was collapsing. A deadly sickness struck her. Her body grew weak. She lost her job. Her husband abandoned her in her sickbed. The family she once sacrificed everything for rejected her. Friends mocked her. Even her landlord and neighbors humiliated her daily. And one cruel day, they threw her out onto the street, her belongings scattered, her health failing. The people around laughed, shouting at her to leave. She begged for mercy, but none was shown. Little did they know, fate was about to turn the story upside down. The sun was hot, and Lena knelt weakly on the dusty ground. Her belongings had been thrown out. She was on her knees, begging the landlord, tears streaming down her face. "Please, just a few more days. I'm sick. I have nowhere to go." The landlord kicked her small bag aside. "You think I run a charity? Get out. You're nothing." His voice thundered over her pleas, and her neighbors mocked her without mercy. She could hardly stand. Her body trembling from sickness, her spirit crushed. And just when the world thought her life was finished, the sound of heavy engines roared through the street. A sleek black luxury car stopped in front of the crowd. Behind it, a security detail vehicle pulled up, and two tall, imposing security personnel stepped out, eyes sharp, presence commanding. The mocking laughter of the neighbors turned into silence. The landlord froze. Everyone stared in shock. The car door opened. Out stepped a man in a perfectly tailored suit, his presence commanding respect. The years had transformed him completely, but his eyes carried a familiar fire. It was Kai. The boy once found dying by the drain now stood tall as a powerful and successful tech mogul. Behind him, his security team. The crowd stepped back. Kai walked forward, his eyes locked on Lena, weak, rejected, humiliated. Lena looked up slowly, her breath caught. She didn't recognize him at first. The boy she saved was gone, but then she saw it. The way he looked at her with love, with reverence, with tears welling in his eyes. Without hesitation, he dropped to his knees in the dust right in front of her. In the presence of the shocked crowd, he bowed his head and spoke words that silenced every whisper. "Sister, you saved me when I had nothing. You gave me life when the world left me to die. Today, I have come to thank you." Tears rolled down Lena's cheeks as Kai gently lifted her to her feet. He turned to the landlord and neighbors, his voice calm but firm. "The woman you rejected is the reason I am alive today. The stone you threw away is the foundation of my life." Shame washed over their faces. The same mouths that mocked her now had no words. Kai held Lena's hand as one of his aides collected her scattered belongings. They guided her into the luxury car. The landlord and neighbors could only watch in regret as the cars drove away, leaving them stunned and humiliated. From that day, Lena's life was never the same. Kai bought her a beautiful house, furnished with comfort and dignity. He flew her to a world-renowned clinic for the best medical treatment, and her health was fully restored. He placed her in honor, calling her the mother of his home, the woman he would forever cherish. A year later, Kai got married. It was a celebration unlike any other, grand, elegant, filled with joy. Lena stood proudly at his side, playing the role of both mother and elder sister. The boy she once carried from the drain was now the man who restored her life. The rejected woman became celebrated, and the world could not forget the story of an analyst who saved a dying orphan and how that orphan rose to give her back the life she lost. The wedding was a spectacle of elegance and joy, a stark contrast to the cold, muddy street where Kai had knelt just a year before. As Lena stood beside him, her health restored and her heart full, she felt a peace she hadn't known in years. The guests, a mix of tech luminaries, investors, and the few true friends who had stood by her, saw not a rejected, sick woman, but the dignified matriarch of Kai's world. After the celebrations, life settled into a new, beautiful rhythm. Lena moved into a wing of Kai's spacious estate, not as a dependent, but as family. Kai, ever mindful of her pride and independence, made her the head of his company's charitable foundation. It was a perfect fit. Lena, with her innate compassion and first-hand understanding of hardship, channeled millions into programs for homeless youth, orphanages, and educational grants. The woman who had been thrown out onto the street was now the one opening doors for thousands. Yet, amidst the comfort, the echoes of her past loneliness sometimes surfaced. She would often sit in the garden, watching Kai and his new wife, Elara, laugh together, a bittersweet joy filling her. She had everything now, but she also carried the memory of being utterly alone. One afternoon, while reviewing foundation applications, a name on a document made her hand freeze. It was from the Port Clement Municipal Court. A man was petitioning for early release from a community service sentence for outstanding debts. The name was Mark, her ex-husband. A cold knot tightened in her stomach. She hadn't heard his name in years. The man who had threatened to poison a child, who had abandoned her in sickness. Seeing his name felt like touching an old, cold scar. She didn't say a word to Kai. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her, what he would do. Kai's love for her was fierce and protective. He would use his immense wealth and influence to ensure Mark suffered indefinitely. But the years had softened Lena's anger, replacing it with a weary pity. She wanted no more vengeance. She simply wanted him gone from her story forever. Quietly, using her own authority within the foundation, she anonymously paid the remainder of his debts. The court released him. She attached a single, typewritten note to the confirmation notice he would receive: a cleared debt does not mean a cleared conscience. Go and start over. Do not look back. She ensured the paperwork was routed through a third-party lawyer, leaving no trace back to her or Kai. It was her final act of closure, not for him, but for herself. Meanwhile, Kai's company continued to thrive. He became known not just for his innovation, but for his ethos. His hiring practices actively sought out those from disadvantaged backgrounds, those who, like he once was, just needed a chance. The story of the CEO from the gutter became legendary, a modern-day parable in the business world. One evening, during a rare quiet moment at home, Kai found Lena looking at an old photo of herself from her banking days. He sat beside her. "You're thinking about the past," he said softly. It wasn't a question. Lena smiled, a little sadly. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd taken a different route home that stormy day." Kai was silent for a moment, then he took her hand. "I don't," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "I think of it every day, Lena. Not with pain, but with purpose. That moment defined us. It taught me that salvation can come from anywhere, and it taught you that your compassion was never a weakness. It was your greatest strength, waiting for its return." He gestured around the beautiful home, toward the city lights twinkling in the distance. "All of this, the success, the money, it's just noise. This," he squeezed her hand, "this is the reward. This family. This peace. You saved a life, and in return, you got your own back." Tears welled in Lena's eyes, but they were tears of healing, not of sorrow. He was right. The grand revenge, the humiliation of those who wronged her, it had been satisfying in the moment, but it wasn't what truly mattered. The real victory was this: a quiet evening, a shared history, and an unbreakable bond forged in the most desperate of circumstances. Years later, an elderly Lena would sit with her grandchildren on her knee, telling them a story. It wasn't a story about a powerful CEO or a luxurious rescue. It was a story about a storm, a kind heart, and a lost boy. She would tell them that the world can be cold and cruel, but that a single act of love can create a ripple that changes countless lives forever. And in a small town far away, a man who had once been consumed by bitterness lived a simple, quiet life. He never knew where his mysterious benefactor came from, but the words on that note haunted him. He eventually found work as a caretaker for a community garden, tending to new life, forever wondering about the grace he had once rejected and had somehow, inexplicably, received.